The human exploration ship Far Horizon moved slowly through the dark edge of the system. Its scanners kept warning, lights flashing, but the crew had already come too far to turn back. The planet below had no official name, only a warning mark in old alien records. Ships that went down never came back. Probes failed. Signals vanished. Still, the planet showed rare energy patterns and valuable data. That was enough reason for humans to try. Commander Hale watched the surface from the bridge. Thick clouds rolled over broken land. Huge shadows moved under forests that looked more like living walls than trees. "This place doesn't like visitors," one officer said. Hale nodded. "That never stopped us before." A small team was sent down in an armored shuttle. Among them was Ethan Cross, a field specialist known for staying calm when things went wrong. He had survived deserts, ice worlds, and hostile first contacts. Still, as the shuttle pushed through the clouds, even he felt uneasy. The air was heavy when they landed. The ground trembled in slow pulses, like the planet itself was breathing. Strange calls echoed through the jungle. The plants reacted to movement, pulling back or snapping closed as the team passed. They moved carefully, scanning and recording everything. For 10 minutes, nothing attacked. That made it worse. Then the ground exploded. A massive shape burst from the trees. It was huge, taller than a building, covered in thick armor plates that looked grown, not worn. Many eyes opened along its head. Its legs struck the ground like falling towers. The team opened fire. Their weapons barely scratched it. "Fall back!" Hale shouted. The creature roared. The sound hit the team like a wave. 2 soldiers were thrown aside. The beast slammed its limb down, splitting the earth. Ethan was knocked off his feet. His weapon flew out of reach. The shuttle engines powered up early. The pilot screamed over the radio that the hull was damaged. They could not wait. Ethan tried to stand. Pain shot through his side. He saw the others retreating, firing as they ran. The beast turned toward him. Hale's voice cracked through the channel. "Ethan, move." Ethan knew he couldn't make it. He looked up at the creature as it lowered its massive head. This was it. Then the monster stopped. It froze mid-motion, one claw raised. Its many eyes shifted upward. Not at Ethan, but at something on its head. A small figure stood there. She was tiny compared to the beast, barely the size of a human child. Her skin was pale blue, her hair white and tied back. She wore simple clothing and held a thin staff. She looked down at Ethan with open curiosity. She tapped the beast's head gently with her foot. The monster lowered its claw and stepped back. The jungle went silent. Ethan lay there, breathing hard, not sure if pain or shock was stronger. He slowly raised his hands, showing he was not a threat. The girl tilted her head. Her eyes were large and bright. She studied him like a puzzle. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, unsure, but clear enough. "Strange. My puppy let you live." Ethan blinked. "Puppy?" The girl slid down the beast's side with practiced ease. When she reached the ground, she was still shorter than Ethan, even while he lay there. She walked closer, circling him. "You should be broken," she said. "Or quiet. But you are not." Ethan swallowed. "I didn't plan on dying today," she frowned, as if considering this idea. "Most do not plan. They still die." The beast behind her shifted, clearly alert, but it did not attack. Instead, it watched the girl, waiting. Ethan slowly sat up. His side hurt, but nothing felt broken. He looked past the girl and saw the shuttle lifting off in the distance. They had left him. The girl noticed his gaze. "They ran," she said simply. "That was smart." "Yeah," Ethan replied quietly. "Smart for them." She stopped in front of him. "Why are you here, soft one?" Ethan thought carefully. "To learn. To explore. We didn't know anyone lived here." She smiled slightly. "Now, you know." She raised her staff and pointed it at the beast. Down. The monster lowered itself fully, resting its huge body on the ground. The girl climbed onto its head again and looked back at Ethan. "You will come," she said. Ethan hesitated. "If I say no?" She shrugged. "Then, my puppy may get confused." The beast's eyes focused on him. Ethan sighed. "All right, I'm coming." With effort, he climbed onto the beast's rough armor. The surface was warm and solid. The girl watched him closely, amused by how careful he was. When he was seated, the beast rose and began to move. Trees bent or snapped as it passed. The ground shook with every step. They traveled for a long time. Ethan lost track of direction. The pain in his side faded into a dull ache. He tried to stay alert, but the steady motion made him tired. Eventually, the jungle opened into a wide plain. Shapes moved across it, many large shapes. Beasts like the one they rode. Some bigger, some smaller. And on their backs were structures. Homes, camps, fires, people. The girl led the beast toward the largest group. Other creatures shifted aside as they approached. Small figures watched from above, riding or standing on platforms. They all looked at Ethan. The beast stopped near a cluster of tents and wooden frames. The girl jumped down and held out a hand. "You may fall," she warned. Ethan took her hand and slid down carefully. When his feet touched the ground, he realized just how small she was. Fragile looking. And yet everything around her moved when she wished it. Others approached. They looked similar to her, though older. Their eyes narrowed when they saw Ethan. "A Deathwalker?" one asked. The girl nodded. "Yes, he lived." Murmurs spread through the group. "That is not possible," another said. The girl shrugged again. "My puppy chose." An older figure stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. "Why bring it here?" She met his gaze without fear. "Because it is strange. And useful things are often strange." Ethan stood quietly, hands visible. He felt like a bug under glass. The elder studied him. "It should not be alive." Ethan couldn't help himself. "I hear that a lot." The girl looked pleased. They gave Ethan water and bound his side. The treatment was simple but effective. As night fell, the camp glowed with soft light from bioluminescent plants. The beasts rested, breathing slowly. Ethan sat near a fire, guarded but not restrained. The girl sat across from him, feeding small bits of meat to her beast's mouth. "You are not afraid," she said. "I am," Ethan replied. "I just don't let it decide everything." She considered this. Fear decides much for others. She looked at him again. "You are weak." Ethan smiled tiredly. "Physically?" "Yeah." Her eyes sharpened. "But you are still here." "Yes." She nodded once, like a conclusion had been reached. "You may stay," she said. "For now." Above them, the giant beasts shifted and settled. The planet watched quietly. Far away, in orbit, human sensors recorded impossible movement patterns. Commander Hale stared at the data, realizing one truth too late. Ethan Cross was not dead, and whatever had spared him was far more dangerous than the creature that tried to kill him. Morning came without a sun. The light slowly spread across the moving camp as the great beasts began to walk again. The ground rolled under Ethan's feet even while he slept. He woke with a sharp breath, reaching for a weapon that was no longer there. He was still alive. The camp was already active. Small blue-skinned figures moved calmly across wooden platforms tied to the beasts' backs. Fires were put out. Gear was packed. Nothing felt rushed. Yet everything was ready. Ethan sat up slowly. His side still hurt, but the pain was controlled. The simple bandage they had used worked better than he expected. The girl stood nearby, watching him. "You did not run," she said. "I didn't have anywhere to go," Ethan replied. "That did not stop others," she said. "They scream, they beg, then they try to escape." "And that works?" Ethan asked. She smiled a little. "No." She motioned for him to follow. "Come. You will learn where you are." "Were." They walked across the beast's back. Ethan noticed ropes, tools, and small marks carved into the armor plates. The creatures were not chained. They moved freely, but always with care, as if aware of the people living on them. How do you control them? Ethan asked. The girl looked at him. Control is a weak word. She stopped and placed her hand flat against the beast's armor. The creature slowed, then stopped completely. It listens, she said. Because it trusts. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You trained it? Yes, since I was small. How? She tilted her head. By learning what it fears, what it wants, what makes it calm. Ethan stared at the creature's eye nearby. It watched him, unblinking. That's not control, he said quietly. That's understanding. The girl looked surprised. Most do not see that. They climbed down to a platform where others waited. An older woman approached. Her posture was straight, her expression sharp. This is dangerous, the woman said to the girl. The Deathwalker should be tested, or ended. The girl crossed her arms. It already survived a test. That was chance. No, the girl replied. The woman looked at Ethan. Your kind breaks easily. Sometimes, Ethan said. Sometimes we don't. The woman snorted softly. Words. She stepped aside. He stays under watch. Ethan was led through the camp. He saw children practicing balance on smaller beasts, guided by older figures. He saw wounded creatures being treated with care. No one whipped them. No chains were used. This was not domination. It was partnership. A sudden alarm sound echoed through the camp, low, vibrating. The girl stiffened. A challenger. Ethan followed as everyone turned toward the edge of the plain. Another massive beast approached, larger than the girls. On its head stood a tall figure, older, wearing decorated armor. He jumped down and faced the girl. You bring prey into sacred ground, he said loudly. He is not prey, the girl replied calmly. He bleeds, the challenger said. Then he is prey. The surrounding beasts shifted. Tension spread like a storm. The challenger pointed at Ethan. I will prove it. Before anyone could stop him, he made a sharp motion. His beast roared and lunged forward. Ethan reacted without thinking. He grabbed a loose rope, pulled it hard, and rolled aside as the ground shattered where he had stood. Dust filled the air. Stop, the girl shouted, but the challenger was smiling. If he lives, he stays. The beast charged again. Ethan's mind raced. He had no weapon, no armor, just instincts and observation. He noticed how the beast moved, how its left side lagged slightly. An old injury. Ethan ran toward a stack of supplies, kicked over a container of food, and rolled behind it. The smell spread fast. The beast slowed, distracted. Ethan climbed onto a low structure, jumped, and landed on the beast's injured side. He struck the sensitive joint with a metal rod he grabbed on the way. The beast roared in pain and confusion, stopping short. The camp went silent. The challenger stared. Impossible. The girl stepped forward. He did not fight the beast. He listened. The challenger scowled. Luck. Ethan dropped to the ground, breathing hard. Pattern. The older woman from before watched closely. Her eyes narrowed with interest. The challenger pulled back. This is not finished. He left, his beast retreating. The girl turned to Ethan. You surprised them. I surprised myself, Ethan admitted. That night, the girl sat beside him again. You do not use strength first, she said. Strength gets you killed, Ethan replied. Thinking keeps you alive, she nodded slowly. You are different from others. What do you call your people? Ethan asked. She hesitated. Names are for outsiders. You may call us shepherds. And you? He asked. She thought for a moment. You may call me Lyra. Ethan, he replied. Ethan, she repeated, testing the sound. Far above, unseen by them, a fleet entered the system. Scanners lit up with warnings. The planet was no longer quiet. The morning air was thick with the smell of dust and foliage. Ethan woke early, his side still sore from the day before, but the pain had dulled enough for him to move without thinking constantly about it. The camp had already stirred to life. Children guided smaller beasts across the plains, their laughter echoing lightly above the rumble of the larger creatures. Shepherds moved quickly. issuing orders and gestures that caused the beasts to shift in unison, creating a strange and hypnotic rhythm that felt almost alive. Lyra stood nearby, perched on the back of her massive beast, her eyes scanning the horizon. When she saw Ethan approaching, she gestured for him to climb up. "You will ride today," she said. "Ride? After yesterday?" "I barely survived the last one," Ethan replied. But he climbed onto the beast's armored back anyway. He had learned quickly that survival on this planet required adaptation more than hesitation. They moved toward the edges of the camp where the terrain began to rise sharply. Here, the ground was uneven, full of crevices and small ridges that would have torn apart a human vehicle. The beasts navigated it easily, their massive legs flexing with precision. "You will need to understand them," Lyra said as they traveled. "Not just the animals, but the other shepherds. They test everything. And if they do not like what they see, they will not hesitate to end it." Ethan nodded slowly. "I've noticed. But why me? Why not leave me for the jungle?" Lyra tilted her head, considering the question. "Most die. You survived because my puppy chose differently. That is rare. And rare things are interesting." Before Ethan could ask more, a distant roar shook the ground. The beasts around them lifted their heads, ears flicking. The sound grew closer, accompanied by shadows that moved unnaturally fast. Ethan's stomach tightened. The roar was not like the normal creatures here. It was something bigger, something deliberate. Lyra didn't hesitate. She tapped her beast with her staff. "Go." The massive creature surged forward. Ethan grabbed onto its armored plates, trying to keep his balance as the ground shook with every step. Ahead, another shepherd had arrived, riding an even larger beast than Lyra's. Its eyes were sharp, its body sleek, and it carried an aura of authority. "You dare bring the outsider here?" the new shepherd called, his voice cutting across the plain. "This world is sacred. Only the worthy may walk among us freely." Lyra did not flinch. "He is no outsider. He is alive." "That is enough." The two beasts faced each other, tension radiating from every massive limb. Ethan's heart pounded. The giant creatures were not yet attacking, but the air was charged with potential violence. Ethan studied the newcomer's beast. He noticed the way its front legs flexed slightly differently, how it shifted weight constantly, anticipating commands. Something about it gave him an idea. As the challenger moved closer, Ethan spoke to Lyra quietly. "Let me try something." She looked at him, unsure. "What can you do?" "Watch," he said. When the challenger's beast lunged forward, Ethan grabbed a loose vine hanging from Lyra's beast. Using it as leverage, he swung himself to the side, landing on a lower ridge just as the creature slammed down where he had been. Dust and debris flew into the air. The challenger's beast roared, confused by the unexpected maneuver. Ethan quickly grabbed a small rock and tossed it toward a patch of flammable plants nearby. A small fire erupted, drawing the beast's attention. It stopped, sniffing the smoke. "You see?" Ethan shouted to Lyra. "They notice patterns. They react to what they fear or what distracts them." Lyra's eyes widened. "Interesting. You do not attack, you guide." Ethan nodded. Sometimes survival is about seeing the flow, not fighting against it. The challenger's face darkened. "This is luck," he shouted, though doubt lingered in his tone. He pulled his staff back, preparing to strike again. Ethan took a deep breath and observed the beast's joints. One leg had a slight limp, likely from a past battle. Using another vine and some quick calculations, he guided the beast to step into a shallow pit hidden by foliage. The creature stumbled, unbalanced, but did not fall. "Stop!" Lyra yelled. But Ethan did not move. He kept working with the beast, understanding it rather than fighting it. The challenger's beast regained balance, but Ethan had already learned the subtle cues it used. He repeated a series of small movements, guiding it toward calm rather than conflict. Slowly, the massive creature halted its aggression, confused but compliant. The surrounding shepherds watched in silence, murmuring among themselves. Never had they seen a human manipulate beasts without force, without dominance, without fear. You are different, the older woman from the camp said, stepping forward. Her eyes studied Ethan like a scholar, examining a rare specimen. You do not command, you listen. That is unusual. I survive, Ethan said simply. Listening comes first. The challenger glared, but his beast lowered its head, obeying the unseen rules that Ethan had tapped into. With one final step, the challenger pulled back, his pride wounded, but his creature unharmed. This is not finished, he said. Ethan exhaled, realizing he had just passed another test. He had not fought with weapons. He had not relied on brute strength. He had used observation, understanding, and strategy. Lyra's smile was small but genuine. You are clever, soft one. My puppy chose wisely. Ethan shook his head. You mean luck? She tilted her head. No. Luck ends. Choice lasts. The camp resumed its normal rhythm. But Ethan noticed something had shifted. Shepherds who had been suspicious now observed him with a mix of respect and caution. Children whispered among themselves, pointing at him with wide eyes. Even the beasts seemed more attentive, responding subtly to his presence. Over the next few hours, Ethan learned more about life among the shepherds. The children were taught to balance on beasts, to understand their moods, to anticipate their actions. The older shepherds guided them, not with fear, but with careful instruction. Injured creatures were treated with skillful hands, not brute force. Ethan saw a level of partnership he had never witnessed before, a harmony between predator and human-like intelligence that was mesmerizing. By midday, Lyra brought Ethan to a flat plain near the edge of the territory. You must see the world, she said. Only then will you understand. They climbed onto her beast once more and began moving faster, crossing plains that stretched for miles. Ethan's eyes took in every detail: the forests, the rivers that glowed faintly under alien minerals, the distant mountains that trembled slightly as massive beasts walked across them. Then, without warning, alarms rang across the horizon. Ethan froze. Lyra stiffened. They come, she said. Ethan squinted. In the distance, a fleet of sleek ships dropped from orbit. They were unlike anything Ethan had seen before. Smooth, metallic, bristling with weaponry. Their sensors flared as they scanned the planet. They are human? He asked. No, Lyra replied. Worse, they do not understand this place. They see only threat. The fleet deployed automated machines to the surface, moving with mechanical precision. Shepard sounded the call to ready the beasts, but Lyra looked at Ethan. They will not stop unless you act. I'm not sure what I can do, Ethan said. You survived my world, she said. You can survive theirs. You must. Ethan thought quickly. The machines moved as predictable patterns, lacking instinct. He could use that. He directed a herd of smaller beasts to flank them, guiding them with sound and motion rather than force. The machines reacted, adjusting positions, but could not anticipate the chaos of living predators moving in coordinated patterns. The larger beasts followed Lyra's lead. But Ethan's guidance made them unpredictable. Traps he had observed days before in the terrain were used to disable machines. Rocks, mud pits, spore clouds all became tools to counter technology. The battle unfolded not as a clash of weapons, but as a war of understanding. Ethan directed, Lyra amplified, and the beasts executed. The fleet's automated forces were overwhelmed, retreating to avoid total destruction. When the dust settled, silence fell across the plain. Shepherds approached, cautious but respectful. Children peeked from platforms, eyes wide in awe. Even Lyra's giant beast lowered its head, exhausted but calm. Ethan sat on the ground, leaning against a massive claw. His body ached, but a strange satisfaction filled him. He had not just survived, he had turned impossible odds into a lesson in adaptation and cooperation. Lyra knelt beside him. You understand, she said. You are not like the others. You think, you adapt, you protect. Ethan shook his head slowly. I try to do what needs to be done. No. Lyra said softly. You do more. You save without seeking reward. You survive without fear. That is why you live. Far above, the fleet in orbit transmitted reports of the events below. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. The humans were not mere mortals. They were not weak, they were capable of understanding, adapting, and surviving in ways even the strongest predators could not predict. And on the surface, as the sun set over the alien plane, Ethan realized that survival was no longer enough. Here, on this planet of giants and shepherds, he had become something different. Something more. Something that could shape the world around him without lifting a weapon, without commanding with fear, just by listening, observing, and acting with intelligence and care. The galaxy had not yet seen the full power of humanity, but on this strange world, guided by a tiny alien girl on a giant beast, Ethan Cross had shown the first proof. The morning air on the planet was calm, almost peaceful, but Ethan knew better. From the horizon, tiny shadows began to stretch across the plains. Far above, in orbit, the remaining ships from the fleet were regrouping, their sensors scanning relentlessly. The humans who had underestimated the planet and its creatures were learning too late that understanding the world below required more than firepower. Ethan stood atop one of the giant beasts, Lyra at his side. Her hands rested lightly on the creature's armor, calm and confident. Today, he realized, they were no longer just survivors. They were the center of something much bigger, a test that had evolved into a demonstration of humanity's unique strength. They are coming again, Lyra said, her voice calm but alert. And this time, they will not retreat so easily. Ethan nodded. Then we make them understand. The two of them guided their beasts down the slopes to the plain, where the smaller creatures of the camp had gathered. Shepherds moved with purpose, organizing teams and coordinating movements. Ethan watched closely. He had learned to read the subtle signals of both people and beasts, and he began to issue instructions with quiet confidence. The first wave of automated ships touched the surface. They were precise, fast, and equipped with weapons designed to destroy anything living. The fleet commanders assumed brute force would dominate this strange planet. They were wrong. Ethan observed patterns. Machines moved predictably, repeating the same scanning routines and attack sequences. He directed the smaller beasts to harass, to distract, and to lure. Then, using the terrain he had memorized, he led the larger creatures into positions where rocks, mud, and spore clouds could slow or disable the machines. Each move was calculated, measured, and executed with efficiency. The machines fired, but the beasts moved in ways that no mechanical logic could anticipate. Ethan saw an opportunity. He shouted to a nearby group of shepherds, signaling them to trigger controlled collapses in the soft earth. Cracks opened, swallowing some machines, while others stumbled over obstacles. The fleet tried to adjust, but every step was countered by the planet itself, by creatures that lived in harmony with the land. Ethan felt a strange satisfaction. He had not fought with weapons or with fear. He had orchestrated the environment, the creatures, and the humans around him like a living symphony. Lyra watched him closely, awe and admiration in her eyes. No shepherd has ever done this, she said quietly. You guide, but do not command. Ethan glanced at her. I don't need to command. They already want to survive. I just help them choose the right path. The battle continued for hours. Ethan moved like a conductor, using subtle cues to coordinate beasts and shepherds alike. The machines faltered. Their programming could not predict the living tactics of the creatures or the clever improvisations of humans. When the flagship of the fleet finally opened fire with a massive energy beam, Ethan acted without hesitation. He signaled a chain of large beasts to block and divert the beam. Trees fell, mud erupted, and a cloud of spores spread into the air, refracting the energy. The shot missed its mark entirely, and the machines scattered in confusion. The shepherds around Ethan cheered quietly, knowing they had survived not through strength alone, but through intelligence and unity. Even the smaller children who had once watched curiously now mimicked his movements, learning by example. Finally, silence fell over the battlefield. The machines lay scattered, damaged, or destroyed. The fleet in orbit began a slow retreat, broadcasting emergency warnings across the galaxy. The message was unmistakable: do not challenge this planet, and do not underestimate the humans who had survived here. Lyra stepped down from her beast, approaching Ethan. She was smiling now, her small hands brushing dust from her clothing. "You saved us all," she said simply. Ethan shook his head. "We saved each other." The elder woman from the camp approached, her expression now one of respect rather than skepticism. "You have proven something no one expected," she said. "You are not just a death walker. You are a leader among them. You think differently. You act without fear, and yet you protect. That is rare." Ethan looked around. The camp was quiet but alive. Creatures moving calmly. Shepherds watching him with a mixture of reverence and curiosity. He had earned their trust not by weapons, but by understanding, by seeing patterns where others saw only chaos, by making choices that kept everyone alive. Lyra tilted her head. "Why did you risk yourself for me?" she asked softly. "You could have left." "As others do," Ethan smiled faintly. "Because kids shouldn't die for adult mistakes," he said. "And you are important. You and your people." She considered his words, eyes wide with wonder. Then she nodded. "Then you are strange, soft one." But strange is powerful here. Weeks passed. The fleet did not return. The shepherds began to treat Ethan as one of their own, though they still whispered among themselves about the unusual nature of this human. He learned their ways, guided the younger ones, and helped train beasts in ways that no shepherd had tried before. When the time came for Ethan to speak to other human explorers, he realized the full significance of his survival. Humans were no longer seen as fragile outsiders. Across the galaxy, intelligence, adaptability, and compassion had become a form of power more formidable than weapons or technology. Lyra and Ethan stood together atop the largest beast in the camp. The creature moved slowly across the plains, its enormous feet leaving deep impressions in the soil. Shepherds of all ages followed behind, riding smaller beasts or guiding creatures on foot. "Do you think they understand?" Ethan asked, looking toward the horizon where the retreating fleet had vanished. "They understand," Lyra said, eyes focused on the distant sky. "But only partially. They cannot grasp what we feel, what we see. Only you, humans, can surprise them so." Ethan considered this. "So we show them. Not by destroying, but by acting differently. By surviving and protecting." Lyra nodded. "Yes. And the galaxy will take note. They will fear, yes, but they will also respect." In the coming months, humans began to arrive in small scouting teams, guided by signals from Ethan's own communications. They were cautious, aware of the dangers, but also confident in the lessons learned. They did not attack. They observed, learned, and adapted, just as Ethan had. Shepherds worked alongside them, sharing knowledge, teaching the balance between creatures and humans. And in that cooperation, something extraordinary happened. Humans and shepherds began to understand each other in a way that neither species had before. Ethan watched it all, knowing the first step had been survival, the second was trust, and the third, he realized, was something much rarer. Respect earned, not through fear or dominance, but through action that showed humanity's true nature. When the first official human delegation arrived years later, they were greeted not with suspicion, but with cautious awe. Beside them, Lyra now rode the greatest beast of all. Towering above the plains, she looked down at the humans, then at Ethan. "They ask why we welcome them," Lyra said. "I tell them this. When my puppy met a human, the human chose kindness over survival. And kindness is more dangerous than any weapon." Ethan smiled. He had come to this planet expecting to explore and gather data. Instead, he had learned a far greater lesson. The galaxy underestimated humanity. Not because humans lacked power, but because their strength lay in choices, in empathy, in the courage to protect even when survival was not guaranteed. Far above, other fleets listened, relaying the reports. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were adaptable, clever, and most importantly, they protected what mattered. And on this strange, wild planet, surrounded by creatures taller than mountains and shepherds smaller than children but fierce beyond measure, Ethan Cross realized something profound. Humanity had always survived, but now it had begun to lead, and the galaxy would never be the same.